Salut tout le monde! My name is Sophia. I'm an American living in Paris, and today I'm showing you the money. Yes, that's right. Today I'm breaking down everything I spent on my visa and going over all the stupid mistakes I made that cost me a lot of money so you don't have to make the same mistakes. So, without further ado, let's get into it. Okay, now just for some context, I did things in a very stupid way, and I wouldn't recommend doing them in the same way that I did. And here's why. So, I had a tourist visa, as I've mentioned before, and I sort of kind of moved to Paris on this tourist visa. The only thing is, this type of visa is a tourist visa. It doesn't allow you to actually live in the country. And so, when I got my job offer at my company, I was trying to look for loopholes of ways that I could stay in the country and change my visa status while staying in France on this type of visa because typically you can't. And so that is what led me to consult with a group of lawyers, and they had advised me that there was a certain visa type called the talent passport entrepreneur visa that I could get that would allow me to stay in the country. Now, I had explained to them my situation. I explained to them that I just wanted to work freelance. I just wanted to be auto entrepreneur. And they still advised me to purchase this visa package. Now, pardon, this visa package cost me 4,725 euros, and I didn't even end up getting this visa. So I paid for this visa package, and what I ended up getting was a lot more simpler of a visa once they told me, only after I purchased their package, that I could not stay in the country and do my new visa. So I was really upset about that. They didn't offer me any kind of reimbursement because the type of visa that I was getting would be a lot simpler for them to work on. And they didn't offer any kind of customer service or really any communication about this at all. And I was really upset because I know I overpaid for this visa package and it should not have cost this much. This visa type only costs $99 to apply for with the French government, and I paid almost $5,000 for them to help me get this visa. So that's our first learning right there. If I had had more time, I would not have gone with this lawyer group, and I probably would have done it myself. However, I was desperate and I was wanting to start this job as quickly as possible. I was wanting to stay in the country. However, that ended up not happening. Anyways, so we moved forward. We did what we did. With this visa package, they advise you to purchase a certain type of health insurance. So when you apply for this auto entrepreneur visa, you need health insurance to show the US government or the French government that you are not going to be a burden, essentially, when you die. So it's like coverage for shipping your body back to your home country and not much else, to be honest. So that I paid 1,150 euros for, or 1,200 USD for. Now you could do this way cheaper because when I did my tourist visa on my own, you also had to get travel health insurance, but I used Cigna health insurance and you can pay for that quarterly. So I could have used Cigna again probably, but I just wanted to do everything that they recommended because I was so scared of not getting this visa. So had I like looking back, I would have done Cigna and I would have just had it for one quarter and then canceled it. Would have cost me 300 rather than over 1,000. Because now I've submitted an application for the Carte Vitale, which is French health insurance. So I have no need for it. Anyways, moving on. Okay, so I spent 110 euros on the translation of my birth certificate to French, or 117 USD. Now, this was not actually needed for my visa application, so I was a little annoyed that Luxity advised me to do this. However, I did end up using it later for my Carte Vitale application, so it was fine. That being said, I think you can find cheaper translators. This one was one that Luxity advised to me, and they do have to be a certain type of translator and put a certain type of stamp for the French government to validate. So keep that in mind when looking for translators. But I think they can be around 70 to 80 euros. I've seen some online for that much as well. I also had to pay a wire transfer fee to send this person money from my US bank account to her French bank account because I didn't yet have my French bank account. So that was $5. The next thing I spent money on was ID photos that Lexity also advised me to take on this application that I didn't end up needing because when I went for my visa appointment, they said they weren't valid. So that was €5 or $6 down the toilet that I don't need. Don't do it. Just take your visa photos at your appointment. Okay. Next thing is fingerprinting. So when you're an American looking for this type of visa, you need to have an FBI background check, criminal background check, and for that you need your fingerprints. So because I was in Paris, I decided to do this on my own. So I walked all around Paris looking for black ink. I found some, spent around $11 on that. I spent $2 on printing the official form to put your fingerprints on them. I spent precious time, like all day, trying to fingerprint this damn document. And there was ink all over my hand, and it was a freaking mess. And it took so long. And then I finally was so proud of myself that I had finished it. I took it to La Poste. I spent $8. I remember I paid extra for fast shipping. I spent $8 at La Poste to ship it to the US, and they lost it. They up and lost it. I remember I was tracking it every day, and it was like stuck somewhere. It was held somewhere, and it had been weeks. And I was freaking the F out because normally for this type of visa, you'd be in the US. So you could just go to the US post office and do electronic fingerprinting, and the FBI would have them immediately. So I was facing a time crunch with my company. I needed to be in Paris because I work in events, I needed to be in Paris for this event. And so I decided to purchase an emergency same day ticket back to New York so I could do electronic fingerprinting. And that ticket cost me $1,301. And that was one of the most painful weekends of my life because my flight was delayed. And when I got into New York City, I literally ran to the US Post Office in Queens and ran into the post office, and the fingerprinting has select hours at the US Post Office, and she had just closed. So I literally had a full breakdown in the US Post Office in Jamaica, Queens. And they felt so bad for me that they opened up the fingerprinting again just for me. Looking back, it's funny, but I was really crying. I was bawling in the post office, like full mental breakdown, full stress and anxiety overtaken me by the devil. It was not pretty, but I'm thankful to them that they opened it. Once all that was said and done, it's $50 to process the electronic fingerprinting, and then $18 for the FBI to process the whole thing and get your certificate. And then I went through a whole back and forth, like a 30 email long chain with Lexity about having this document translated and apostilled. Now, apostilled, I still don't know what that is, but it was like a 30 email long chain. And at the end of that chain, my lawyer finally woke up and was like, "Oh, you don't actually need that." And I was like, "Why didn't you just say that before? Why'd you make us go back and forth on this crazy?" Anyways, so I didn't need to end up spending any money on that because it's really expensive to apostille a document and it takes like weeks. So thank God I didn't have to do that. So that is the fingerprinting debacle. And then the last thing I spent on my visa fee was the visa processing fee at the appointment that I had in New York City. So that's ended up being $151, again because I had to purchase new photos because the photos that I brought, they were not valid, as well as I had to pay for my shipment of my passport from the French consulate in Washington D.C. back to me, because when you go for your visa appointment, they actually take your passport to stamp the visa in your passport. So that was $151. I had to spend around $600 on that flight to go from Paris to New York, and I was in New York for about a week. It took about 5 days for them to process it. And when you do this type of thing, normally it can take anywhere from 2 to 4 weeks. So I bought a one-way ticket to New York, hoping it would take like 5 days because it only took that long for my tourist visa. So it was really, really full of anxiety that week, I remember. And I'm getting exhausted just talking about it. But it only took 5 days. I actually had hotel points, so I stayed in a hotel off of points with my boyfriend. I think if my boyfriend hadn't been there, I would have just stayed with friends for free. but because he was, we stayed in a hotel and we had points. But I ran out of points on the last day, so I paid $72 for that room. Added in $200 for miscellaneous visas. I mean, miscellaneous, wow, Ubers. Then I got my visa, and once you get your visa and you return to France, you have to validate your visa, and that costs money. So you have to pay a tax called the Timbre Fiscal, and that is 200 euros or 208 USD I paid. And that is everything that I spent to get my visa. Now, that being said, you do not have to spend anything close to this amount. As you can see, my journey was a bit crazier than it needed to be. And I went through a lot to get this visa because I had already decided and up and moved to France basically without having a real plan or thinking through the legal ramifications of moving on a tourist visa. So that was my fault, and I own that. And luckily, I had about 20,000 USD in savings just specifically for this move. So I was able to afford this. Without my housing costs, all of this cost me about, hang on, $8,868. Now, I think you could do it if you were to do everything yourself and to do a lot of research and figure it out. I think that you could do it for less than $2,000, including the flight. You don't need to hire this fancy law firm. You can use a different type of health insurance, one that charges you quarterly and then cancel it. You can find a cheaper translator. You can be based in your country and only buy one flight rather than moving on an invalid visa and flying back and forth. There's many ways to cut costs here. But yeah, that's pretty much my journey, everything I spent, all the mistakes I made. A lot of it really hurt, so I'm hoping this video helps you not make the same mistakes. I'm a crazy person, and so that's kind of why I did things the way that I did. But yeah, I hope you enjoyed watching this. Let me know how your journey to France is coming along, and I'll talk to you soon. Bye. Bisous.